Dear students, welcome back. So we're looking at foundations of law, and well, we have covered quite a few things lately. And if you may recollect, we have in the previous lectures looked at different types of legal systems, culminating with the Islamic law, Hindu law, and a bit of American jurisprudence. So today we start off with lecture 5, which is the legal profession. And I hope these video lectures are still okay. I'm sorry we are not able to meet in the classroom, and there are a lot of issues with regard to this coronavirus epidemic. It seems that things are not as dramatic as they were in spring, but nonetheless, there is still a lot of worry because of rising cases. Usually, around this time in October is when we start looking at exam dates and the possibilities for having exams and discussing various options. Well, at this stage, I can't really comment about them because the studies manager has indicated that we should leave this to December because that's when the exams will be anyways. So let's see. As soon as I get some information about this, I can verify it and then confirm with you. Either we have exams in the classroom or else plan B would be online exams. So I have all sorts of ideas about this. All right. So today we look at certain aspects. Number one, of course, are general principles of law, and these are of course very straightforward and simple, and they deal with different issues. For example, principles of proportionality, protection of legitimate expectations, rule of natural justice, reasonableness, equity, and things like this. So I have put some of these issues in the notes as well, under English law and then French law, continental law. So some of these issues are here, and we'll be looking at them in again very general terms today. Now remember, as I've always told you in the past as well, after clearing this course you will not become full-fledged lawyers. All right, this is just foundations of law. You just get some basic idea about how things are, and then of course you learn more as you proceed further during your studies. So why do we have the general principle of laws? Well, you see, they are important. People have expectations from a legal system, and usually in the classroom, I put two videos, which I can't show right now to you, but I'll put links to them in YouTube so that you can also see them later on. And well, they are very important because the first one is quite topical and it deals with incidences of racism in the United States. And of course, we all know about police shootings and things which occur. Of course, I'm not saying that the police have an easy job. I can understand from a police person's perspective as well. But there are these two videos that I'll try to put up, and hopefully, we can draw some comparisons between the two. So, one is of this incident in the United States. It was related to a person called Rodney King, and he happened to be African American. This was in the 1990s, late 89, 88 or something. And basically, what happened was, well, he was driving his car. Some white police officers asked him to stop, and he was speeding. So then they caught up with him, and then they beat him up, which, well, you would say happens all the time. Well, what was interesting in this case was that in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, you didn't have smartphones and cameras readily available, but you had this new craze of recording on a video recorder. And so somebody actually made a video recording of this incident, and this was telecast, and of course, it became a huge scandal. And then of course the police officers were charged, and this was in Los Angeles, so they appeared before court, and there was a jury, and there was a trial, and well, surprise surprise, the jury, comprising of mostly white people, decided that these police officers were not guilty at all. And then, of course, what this resulted in was some of the biggest rioting that had occurred in recent history in the United States, and Los Angeles was completely on fire. And of course, it's interesting from today's viewpoint as well, because you see these incidents happening over and over again and again, and then there is public anger, and then people get super upset, and then you have different crowds out on the streets, and you saw that lately as well earlier during this year in summer in the United States. And so, of course, the point here is that there are legal expectations that people have. People have a certain notion of what should be the law and what is a good law or a bad law. And of course, there are emotional times when a crowd gets in with a crowd mentality, but there are still nonetheless deep rooted issues that can arise with regard to discrimination or lack of opportunities, or a feeling that the government does not care, or that police brutality is ingrained in the system, and things like that. So, well, it can be quite illustrative to stress upon the point that policing is not an easy function. Just like anything else in government departments, taxation, for example, or if you notice, there was a lot of literature about the democracy deficit in the European Commission or in Brussels, and how decisions are made. And a lot of nationalist feelings were aroused in many European countries based on these issues. So we look at these things over here. Of course, you may also be aware of all these coronavirus related closures imposed upon the economies by the different governments, and then the pushback by people who are affected, people who lose their jobs or businesses. So of course, we cover all of these issues and try to look at them. A second video is from Helsinki, and it's about this person. He was an Estonian, and he wanted to set up a stall in the harbor in Helsinki at the weekend market, and he was not given permission to do that. And nonetheless, he set up the stall, and so the police came to ask him what's happening, and so there's an argument, and all of this was recorded. So I'll put up that video as well. And it's important to see the difference in how the police reacted in Helsinki vis-a-vis how they reacted in Los Angeles. And so, of course, we can already expect to see certain differences, because we normally understand the police role as being policing, and not shoot to kill, right? So we see the differences over here, and hopefully that will make you think about the issues at hand. So some of these general principles: number one, proportionality, and the reaction of high authority to an unlawful act must be proportional to the scale of the act. In other terms, also, the punishment must be reasonable. And so there are different examples about these things. And proportionality, of course, is difficult to determine sometimes. But we have all seen how sometimes restrictions can be imposed, which may appear to be highly disproportionate. And so there are some examples about this as well. And you see, it's the same like, for example, in the classroom, if you mess up the homework, does that mean that I should get you expelled from the university? No, of course not. That would be completely disproportionate. Freedom of commercial activity, freedom to pursue a trade or profession, freedom from unfair competition, general freedom to do what you wish, unless the law prohibits this. And then, of course, this can cause all sorts of issues. I know of one such case. We had this student, and he was also interested in business activities, and he was Finnish, well, partly Finnish anyways, and mixed, his parents were from different countries. I think his mom was Finnish. And so he was interested in tobacco products. And apparently it turned out that there was this chewing tobacco product which was completely legal in Germany and which was illegal in Finland. And so, of course, his question was, well, if you're in the European Union, how can you have these differences, and why should they be allowed? Of course, there are health requirements, specifications, because of which you may have a bit of curtailment of free of commercial activity, but otherwise you can have situations where the law cannot really stop you from indulging in commerce. Non-discrimination would be the guarantee of equal treatment or the prohibition of discrimination. This is a very general principle. It could apply to different things. Maybe, for example, you have a restaurant which says that only certain people are allowed, or there's a discrimination, certain types of people are not allowed. So that could be covered in this. Another example could be, maybe you have this old gentleman's club where only men can be members, and then of course this can cause issues, because if it's a private club, can it then entail a situation where they say that, okay, only men can be allowed, or if there is a public element, then can it be said that this would be discriminatory because women should also be allowed? So of course you have to balance over here private club establishments versus public establishments. But of course nobody can disagree on the fact that if a public university or a state university has a rule that women cannot be academics, then of course that would be highly discriminatory. But what about situations like you have in many European countries, for example, the draft, which would mean that there's conscription, and after a certain age, all male adults have to join the army for 2 years or 8 months or whatever. And then could you say that this is discriminatory because it excludes women? Again, all sorts of issues that come up here. Or if you have a situation where you have an elite anti-terrorist squad or a fighter squadron in the Air Force, and then there's a restriction and you say that women cannot be a part of this. So this could be discriminatory again in different ways. Again, this could be extended sometimes, for example, to people who are, let's say, homosexual, bisexual, transsexual, all sorts of these issues that arise. And so you can imagine how non-discrimination can be a real issue at times. Sometimes these things can come up in strange situations. For example, marriages in different European Union countries are defined in different ways. And so you could have certain countries where a marriage is only allowed in the context of a man and a woman. And then in some other countries, you can have same-sex unions but not marriages. And then you have a third set of countries where you can have a marriage between the same sexes as well. And of course, this should not really be an issue if you're living in France and you're married to whoever you're married and you're living happily ever after. But let's say you want to then migrate for work purposes to Poland or now even some other countries, and then you find out that there's a restriction and you cannot move in. So could this be discriminatory, not towards citizens of the same country but towards EU citizens? So again, a lot of questions that come up there. Protection of legitimate expectations is a very important issue. For example, principle of non-retroactivity of legislation or respect for acquired rights. So these are covered over here. And legitimate expectations would mean, let's say you come to Estonia, you set up a business and things are going well. And then some fine day, somebody comes and says, I'm from the government and we are taking away your business because, we have decided that this business should not be allowed to foreigners. So again, this could be very strange because you have legitimate expectations that, you have been led to believe that this is the law, and now suddenly the law is being changed to cause problems for you. It's the same like, you enrolled for this law degree program, and so you would expect to get a law degree and at the end of 3 years. And if at the end of 3 years they say, well, sorry, we can't give you a law degree, but we'll give you a degree in business administration, That's not what you signed up for. So you have legitimate expectations. Non-retroactivity of legislation can be extremely complicated sometimes. Now, this is a very well settled area of law as far as criminal law is concerned. So let's say you do something which is not a crime today. So, well, you can do it and you should not have a problem. But tomorrow, if the government introduces a new law and says, well, this thing is a criminal activity, not from tomorrow onwards, but even retroactively, if you go backwards, then that could be a problem, right? Because I did something today thinking it's perfectly legal because I knew it's legal. And then tomorrow, the government changes the law, and now what has happened in the past is also affected by that law. Now that would be retroactive and not acceptable. Well, that's normally settled as far as criminal law is concerned. But, well, for example, if the law says I can keep 10 grams of cocaine in my pocket for personal use without any problems, and then tomorrow the law changes and then they catch me and they say, well, as per the new law, what you did in the past was illegal, so now you're in trouble, that would be an issue. But sometimes you have taxation issues, and can retroactive legislation be imposed in these situations? Is a very gray zone area in many countries, because lawyers are super smart and they try to find loopholes. And of course, well, the easy thing would be to say, all right, this was a loophole, it's been covered now, and then we continue on with the law. And or the government could say, no, well, we're talking about 100 billion euros in taxation arrears, and so we need to retroactively amend the law because we know what you were doing and you were exploiting certain loopholes because of non-clarity in the legislation. Now, but you see, all of these are very gray zones, because you can already imagine what sort of conflicts can arise because of legitimate expectations that people have. Then there's a right to be heard, and that's a very basic right. And it basically means that before wielding statutory power to the detriment of a particular person, the administrative or judicial authority has to hear what that other person has to say, even if the law does not specify this. So now let's say, well, again, in a very simplistic manner, so I am in charge of the course, and I say that you, particularly, yes, you have messed up, and so you failed the course. And because you failed this course, now let's say you're finished, so you need to get kicked out of this program. And because of this, now we also need to write a letter to Kela and say that you have been kicked out, and so you should be made to refund all the money that you have been getting from the Finnish government. Now, imagine doing all of this without giving you the opportunity of being heard. I mean, it's not just what Pawan says, Pawan thinks, Pawan does. Maybe even you should have a say in this to sort of counter and come back to this and try to explain your point of view. So that's the right to be heard. And of course, this is a right to a fair hearing. And hearings would then imply it's not just enough to say, okay, well, tomorrow's the trial, and yeah, come tomorrow and say whatever you want to say. Well, that's not how things work. If you are going to be faced with a trial, then of course you should be given advance notice of 15 days or a month at least. If you have a right to be represented by a lawyer and you don't have a lawyer, that doesn't mean that anybody can just appear on your behalf after meeting you 3 seconds before the trial begins. Well, you should be entitled to have consultation and things, even with an appointed lawyer. So all of these are issues that come up. You also have, for example, anti-dumping regulations, which are very relevant under the World Trade Organization. So let's say the US claims that the European Union is selling something at a less price, or let's say the European Union complains that there's something happening in China. So again, there would be a procedure for these things, and it's not like you can do whatever you want to do. Although, of course, well, that's what President Trump has been doing. But again, there are certain reasons for whatever he does. So I'm sure there are some. But again, you see, the point I'm trying to make here is you have the right to be heard, and this is intertwined with the right to a fair hearing. Then there are fundamental rights which have laid down over here. Again, these are not something that have come overnight. You can see historically how these sort of rights have evolved over a period of time. Well, okay, maybe in the Greek times and Roman times you had certain rights and obligations and duties. But then if you start looking, for example, at the Magna Carta in England, or if you look at the various declarations that came about after the English Civil War or the French Revolution, or you see even the American Revolution, and all of these slowly, partly thanks to philosophers and other such people, there have been different observations and issues have been raised. And so, of course, we now have certain fundamental rights which more or less all countries agree to. You even have United Nations charters regarding these rights, and some of them could be right to life, which is interesting because does right to life include the right to commit suicide? Maybe a right to life means a right to a good, dignified life, and now you are severely ill, terminal stage, you have no chance of recovery, and well, either you can wait and die slowly over a period of 1 or 2 months or half a year, or you can apply for euthanasia and die today. All right. So again, a right to life can have different issues, consequences. It could also be sort of intertwined with a woman's right to have an abortion. Now, you would ask, what right to life is that? Well, it's not just the life of the newborn, unborn child, for example, but rather the right of a woman to have a healthy life and not to have children if she doesn't want to. So this could be covered over here. Then, of course, right, freedom to protect from yourself from torture. Well, torture again means different things in different contexts. Well, you may say listening to Pawan's video lectures is a torture, or doing Pawan's homework is a torture. Well, no, that's not torture. There are specific definitions for that. Then you have servitude, liberty, and security, fair trial, privacy. Again, the right to abortion can come under a woman's right to privacy. So again, you have these issues here: freedom to form associations, freedom from discrimination, free movement, death penalty, things like that. Of course, what this could also mean is, just as you have a right to, wear any costume that you like, would that mean that yes, you have a right to wear swimming clothes at a beach even if they are a bit revealing? But at the same time, what if somebody wants to be covered up in a burqa or a burkini, or things like that? Can you then say that this is not acceptable? On what grounds? So just as you have a right to walk with your hair open, can somebody also claim that she has a right to walk with her head covered with a scarf? So again, issues that come up here, nothing is black and white. Servitude and also this right to be free from slavery has some very interesting insights, because there was one situation where conscription is compulsory. I think it was in Holland, or in Netherlands, and that's Holland. And so some people complained, and then these two men complained that they were being forced to serve in the army for 8 months, and that was slavery. And the court said, no, that's not slavery. That's your right to your obligation to serve your country's interests. So that could be an issue. Another issue was, I remember that in some countries there was this rule that after your law school studies, then you qualify to become a lawyer, and then you have to do compulsory free service, legal service for 2 years. And the idea is that that's how you learn, by practicing. And then even poor people who can't afford money can now get free legal advice, and you can represent them in court, and ha ha ha, everybody's happy. Well, everybody's happy except the poor young lawyer who now, after studying in law school, has to work for free for 2 years. Maybe that's not such a good idea if you are that young lawyer. because you have dreams, you have aspirations, you're 23, 24. You don't want to wait till the age of 26 or 27 before you can actually start earning money. And so these are all issues that come up. I mean, this is not slavery, this is not servitude, but you could claim, for example, as in this case, that this is unfair to you. Freedom of movement, we all know that half the class, more than half, is Finnish. You come to Estonia to study. A lot of Estonians go to work in Finland. A lot of Finns go to work in Sweden. A lot of Swedes go to work in Norway. And Norwegians, I don't know, they come to Helsinki and Tallinn to party. Yeah, but of course, you see, you have this freedom of movement, especially in the European Union, because it's this open market and borderless. So everybody has these rights, and then death penalty can have these issues as well, because it's prohibited in all European Union countries, for example. But then the question that can arise is, let's say somebody commits a crime in Arizona or Texas and kills a police guard or a bank guard and commits a robbery, and then flies out of United States of America and lands in Helsinki or in Tallinn. And now let's say this person is a Finnish national or an Estonian national. And now, the US government is saying, well, there's a trial and this person killed 3 bank guards and looted $5 million from a bank. It was a very bloody, cruel act of, robbery or whatever. And so the question that would come up here is, the US government is saying, well, you need to extradite this person so that he or she can be tried in the United States, in Arizona or in Texas. Now, of course, if this person is a Finnish national, the Finnish government may not be very keen about that. But what if it's some Indian guy married to a Finnish national, and now the US government is saying that this Indian guy was a robber, send him back to Arizona for the trial, and in which situation the Indian guy may actually face a death penalty. And now his Finnish spouse says, well, no, that would be unfair, because it would cause problems for the spouse. The spouse could end up getting widowed, for example. So again, all these issues come up here. They can be very complicated. And so death penalty, again, fundamental rights. You have to understand, of course, over here, that there are certain rights which the country would give to its nationals. And then there are certain rights which the regional bloc would give to all the citizens of its member states. And then, of course, there are extraterritorial issues as well that can arise. You can have people from neighboring countries, let's say Russia or somewhere else, dissidents who land up, and then how do you deal with these issues, because they may face a death penalty back home. So again, a lot of questions can arise. This can have very strange consequences. So for example, I know there was this gangster from India who was involved in the drugs business, and he was involved in kidnapping and murder and stuff. And then he escaped and was living in Lisbon for a very long time. And then, finally the law caught up with him. So the Indian government sent a request to the Portuguese government that please extradite this guy. He's an Indian national. This was his Indian passport at least 5 years ago, and he's needed for crimes, for crimes, in very serious crimes in India. And of course, this person then went all the way to the European Court of Human Rights and said that if I go back to India, I'll be executed, because capital punishment is still, it's rare, very rare, but it's still there, just like in Japan or in many other countries. So basically the Indian government then had a deal with the Portuguese government, and the Indian government said, okay, look, whatever punishment he gets, it won't be more than the punishment that you can get in Portugal under Portuguese laws. All right. So what that means is this person could get maybe life in prison, but again, life in prison is still 15 years or 20 years or whatever, but no death penalty, and that's a guarantee given. So the state will not press for a death penalty, even though these crimes are very serious and come under what you would call capital offenses under Indian criminal laws. So you have a lot of these issues. You may ask, why the hell should Portugal or the European Union care about some Indian gangster staying in Portugal? So again, issues that come up here, fundamental rights, and sometimes what happens is that these rights don't only extend to nationals but also to foreigners in those countries. So the profession of law now is something that we should look at briefly. So, well, most of you hopefully plan to become lawyers or at least are studying to get some basic knowledge of the law. So, well, you have a hierarchy here. Of course, you have the legislature, the parliament, the politicians, elected representatives, they make laws, they debate, they try to forge some coalitions and then come up with some ideas which then get written into statutes or laws. Sometimes they have to comply with European Union directives, regulations, international obligations, treaties, conventions. So that's what Parliament does, the legislature does. Then you have the executive, which is basically the acting arm of the government, and so these are the officers in the ministry. So their job is to implement the double taxation avoidance agreements, for example, tax collection, maybe law and order, public health care, all these sort of things. So you have the executive who will deal with that. And then, of course, you have judges, and the judges are now in the courts, and they will implement these laws and make sure that the laws are obeyed. And if somebody does not obey the law, then that person gets a fine or imprisonment or whatever. And as we have seen in the past, you have differences over here, different approaches. So, for example, common law judges make law. Also, sometimes civil law where judges follow the law. So, of course, this is the way the system is set. There's no hierarchy over here. They're all equal pillars, and the politician, the policeman, the magistrate or the judge, they're all equal here. They have to be divided and kept separate so that you don't have this nexus forming, because that can be very detrimental for democracies. So what does a lawyer do here? Well, the lawyer's job is to, of course, look at all these three and to see how they work and how things pan out. And of course, based on the lawyer's expertise, experience, observations, the lawyer can then advise private clients or organizations about what rules would apply. So let's say the legislature passes a law which says that, well, you have a right to have a bar or a restaurant. All right, so this is your commercial establishment. Of course, people come here all the time, so there should be some safety measures. Then you have the executive, which would come up with all these guidelines, how the staff should be trained, how hygiene should be maintained, what sort of food can be sold, what are the permissions required, how do you source raw material, what prices you sell them at, things like that. And then, of course, you could have a situation where, because of coronavirus now, the health advisor to the government or then the bureaucracy, they say, well, coronavirus is spreading because all these young people are getting drunk and they're partying. And so now the police comes up with new laws, not laws, but rules and small requirements, administrative in nature. And then they say, well, all bars should shut at 10 o'clock and there should be restriction on traveling. And well, you can't go between Estonia and Finland anymore unless you have a valid reason, and you need to have your passport with you, and no tourism anymore. So now let's say your uncle is very upset because your uncle was planning to come to Tallinn from Helsinki to buy 100 bottles of beer, and now he can't do that. And so, of course, he may go to the court and say, what the hell, for the last 20 years, I've been coming to Tallinn every weekend to get 100 liters of beer, and now I can't do that because of some disease and all these crazy restrictions. And now, well, what happens here? Of course, as a lawyer, you can represent this client, your uncle or aunt, and then you can say, well, This is the law. The law is very clear about what you can do, but the law provides for certain emergency situations, and clearly this is one of those. And so the police are acting in this regard. And of course, so of course, what are the ways to go around this? Now remember what I taught you in the very first lecture. As a lawyer, your job is, well, you have three basic duties. Rule number one, duty number one is, okay, not duty. Let's just say there are different rules for lawyers, and three of these are: rule number one, you need to bend the law without breaking the law. Very important, of course. Yeah. Rule number two, well, if there is an issue over here, and if your client is not listening to you properly or something like that, then you have to, of course, be extremely careful over here and make sure that your client is the one who ends up in prison and not you. All right. So of course, and well, I messed that up. I'm sorry about this. I don't know why. So rule number one was bend the law without breaking the law. Rule number two is don't get caught. And rule number three is if somebody goes to prison, make sure it's your client and not you. All right. So of course, to do all of this, you need to be a smart lawyer and a good lawyer. And then of course, you can't really solve all the problems. But you can always come up with some creative ideas over here. So I can give you an example about this. This was an issue that was being handled by the law firm in which I was working, and this is quite illustrative because this problem still hasn't gotten solved. So this was mid-90s, and the telecom industry was booming, and mobile phones were everywhere. And so here was a situation where there was this company from Hong Kong, and it had multiple investors and everybody, and they had set up a company in India, and they were doing really well with regard to mobile telephony. All right, so they had almost 25% of the market. So we're talking about almost, they had like 500 million subscribers, and they were doing really very good. And now the British company Vodafone wanted to buy this Chinese company's business interests in India, and because they wanted to enter this Asian market, which they felt was very important for them. Now, they didn't want to pay taxes. This is, of course, a very strange situation, but that's why, if you have to pay 200 million euros as tax, you would rather prefer to give 2 million to the lawyer to find a way that you don't have to pay any tax at all. It's a win-win situation for you, right? You end up saving 198 million euros in taxation, and then you get a good lawyer as well. So of course, now the question that came up was, is a Hong Kong based company, there is a UK based company, and there is this business in India, and as per Indian tax laws, income accrues or is caused to arise when the business is based in India. So it doesn't matter where your head office is or whatever, it's based on where your business occurs. And for some strange reason, India had this treaty, double taxation avoidance agreement treaty with Mauritius, which basically stated that whatever investments happen through Mauritius will be tax free. And so based on this idea, this UK company decided that they would, the Hong Kong company will set up a company in Mauritius, sell all the shares to the Mauritius company. Hong Kong, Mauritius, no tax because of the tax regime. The UK company would come and buy this Mauritius-based company, and again, there would be no tax between UK and Mauritius because it's an Isle of Man and Mauritius. And that way they would get the Indian company business without having to do any transaction in India. And of course, the Indian government was not happy about that. And so they filed this litigation, which has been going on. And my law firm was the one that gave this crazy advice. And even today, to date, this taxation issue has been very messed up. So these are some issues of how lawyers can deal with these sort of problems. Not always in the best way, but you get the gist of it. So let's stop here for today because my time is running out. See you later. Goodbye.